Hello all, and welcome to this. And hopefully, the audio will not cut out like it did the last video, which I have no clue why that happened. I still don't know, why 6 minutes into the video it decided to die on me. I'm not sure. I guess we'll figure it out. I know I had a hard time processing the video, so maybe that had something to do with it. Honestly, I have no clue. But so I am gonna quickly go over the ROH pay-per-view again, and then not go into great detail, and then I'm going to do a Q&A, because I do want to do a Q&A. That was what I had planned to do today, even after I had done the ROH video, so I thought I would come on here and just do a really long, drawn-out video, which I know some of you hate, but guess what? Too bad. So I do want to keep doing these Q&As, so for all of you that would like to send in questions, please send in questions. I have a lot of questions because I haven't done them in a while, and a couple guys sent me a ton of questions, so I decided I would answer all of them. And you guys don't have to keep it to wrestling. You can ask me. I've talked about comic books on here. You can talk about comic books, movies, anything entertainment related. How does that sound? If I like the question, I'll answer it. So there you go. So feel free to ask whatever. If I don't want to answer it, I won't. So there we go. Pretty simple, I thought. But anyways, let's talk us a little bit about Border Wars, since that completely sucked on the last video. Shall we? Yes, let's shall. Okay, so pay-per-view, and I talked about this. It's very unfortunate of what happened with the, well, it's unfortunate and it sucks that the iPay-per-view, that they had the issues they did, because anyone that has seen it has seen the production values were much better than any iPay-per-view I've seen. Not only that, the video was good. I've heard from people that actually did get to see it live. That video was actually better on live than it has been on what we've seen as far as the replays. The audio was good. The only production snafus I can even point out where there was a couple missed. The cameras didn't pick up all the action like they should, much like we see in TNA at times. So, there was that. And then on a couple of the pre-taped interviews, the audio was a little off. That was it. Other than that, this was a ton better production-wise than anything I've seen from Ring of Honor, and I haven't seen really anybody else's iPay-per-views except for Jakara's. So I would say, it was better than that. So that is saying something. So that was good. So unfortunately, with all of the issues, no one really got to see that. No one got to see I thought, a great card. I wouldn't. Was it a home run, show of the year card? No. Was it? It was, but it was probably about as perfectly booked as this card needed to be, because you didn't have, a lot of show-stealing stuff on the undercard, only to have, the main event kind of not have the importance it had. So I was perfectly fine with that. I thought we had matches that over-delivered. I thought we had matches that, I think we only had one match that under-delivered. You had only really one match on this show I would say was okay. I think everything else was good to great. So it's really hard to say that the show was anything other than great. I think if it had one other great match, it would probably be a blow-away show. This really wasn't a blow-away show, I would say. It didn't have that feel to it, even though the wrestling was really good, the booking was really good, everything was really great about the show. It just didn't have that that feel of an amazing show. But you had Rhino versus Eddie Edwards, and I'm fine with Rhino being in Rhino and Finlay and Lance Storm being brought in. Particularly Rhino. Rhino probably out of those three guys is the biggest name, I would think. I don't think Finlay would be a bigger name than Rhino. I could be wrong there, but I'm fine with that, because I think that you do have to use names. Doesn't mean you have to put guys, you have to put them over guys, but you do have to have names that people recognize, so that they kind of, oh, I remember this guy, and then you can, introduce your other guys. So I'm fine with that. I thought this was a good match. The ending was the only thing I really didn't like, but I thought that was good. I thought the 6-man, TJ Perkins, All Night Express versus Young Bucks and Mike Mondo, I thought that was really good. I thought it was a really fun match. It's the type of match that we, unfortunately, we don't get enough in Ring of Honor now, and I think that you need at least one match like that that's kind of a six-man spot fest. I like six-man tags anyways for that reason, because I think you can do a lot more with a six-man. You can make it entertaining, you can make it fun. There's nothing wrong with that. Jay Lethal versus Ciampa, I thought also was good. Told a good story. I liked the end of it with Ciampa kind of going crazy after getting his first loss. You know, the announcers did a great job. You know, Kevin Kelly and Nigel do an amazing job on these, and put over the fact of what needed to be put over storyline-wise. Lance Storm and Mike Bennett. I don't think this was as good as the stuff in Florida, but it still was a good match. You know, I'm sure they're going to do a third match, so that should be entertaining. Elgin versus Cole, again, a good match, not a great match. This match, I really did think that you could have just had Elgin go out there and destroy Cole. I think that would have been perfect. They didn't do that, though, so, but this was still good, entertaining. The Falcon Arrow spot, and if you've seen the match, you know what I'm talking about, with Mike Elgin, was insane, in my opinion. That was just an insane spot. So, there was that. Strong and Finlay, you know, I was hoping this match would be a little bit better than it was, but I still thought it was a good match. It was a good, solid match. You know, was then you had Briscoes versus World's Greatest Tag Team. This was the worst match on the card, in my opinion. It just, you know, this feud needs to end. It's not going to end, though. We're not going to see them wrestle for a while, at least as far as tag team champs. So I'm fine with that. You know, this feud just needs to go away. I have seen the ending that happened in this match before. I know a lot of people hadn't, so, and I do think the announcer did a good job of trying to put it over, so there we go. Then you had Davey versus Kevin Steen. Not as good as a match as I thought we were going to get, but I still thought it was a great match. The crowd was great. I thought everything about it was really good. I loved the end where it kind of looks like, where, you know, the question was asked by Kevin Kelly, you know, where we swerved this whole time, and I guess we will find out. So that was pretty good. Again, it kind of sucks that you know, Ring of Honor went out there, did pretty much everything they needed to do to put on a great iPay-per-view, except I guess make sure that their servers could their servers on the login side can handle it. I mean, that's pretty much what happened. It wasn't so much the stream, it wasn't anything to do with that. It was the servers for the web page couldn't handle the traffic. And I'm curious, I don't think this show probably did a lot of buys, and of course Ring of Honor did offer to refund the show, or you can see Best in the World for free to anyone that ordered it. And I'm curious how many people last minute were trying to order the show, and that's kind of maybe what crashed the site. Not that it should have, because it shouldn't, and that's not an excuse. I'm just in my mind trying to figure out, you know, what happened. But apparently they've said they're going to fix that. I hope that is the case, because it kind of, again, it sucks that that happened, because you know, iPay-per-view is what it is. So there you go. And again, you know, if you want to check this out, I would definitely say check it out, because production-wise, this was very well done. So there is that. Now let's get on to the questions. Let's see. Actually, you know what? I'll be right back. I want to make sure that this actually did what it was supposed to do. So, yay! We have sound. Okay, so that was just all I wanted to check. It freaked me out last time. So let's get on with the questions, shall we? All right. Westclev83. What do you think about guys in WWE working a lighter style? It seems to me even WWE started to lighten up around the time Benoit died. Do you think it had anything to do with Benoit's death? I definitely do. I think the whole concussion thing, that actually had started doing a lighter style, even kind of before even then, because they were trying to get guys to stop getting. You had a bunch of guys in the early 2000s that got neck fusion surgeries, and they definitely were trying to get guys to stop getting that. Beyond the concussion deal, they were trying to get guys to stop getting that surgery. So they're definitely working a lighter style than they were, you know, in the early 2000s, and it's probably for the best, because guys aren't getting that surgery anymore, so that's probably a good thing. So anyways, let's see, Chris Warden 420. Hey, T-Slay. Vince McMahon, Eric Bischoff, and Dana White have all publicly denied that there is a that there is a large crossover audience between pro wrestling and MMA. I personally disagree. All you have to do is go back to the first season of Ultimate Fighter, 2005, which aired every Monday night, right after Raw on Spike TV, which catapulted the UFC to great success. What do you think? I agree with what you just said, and you know the thing you have to understand is, okay, Dana White says that because he doesn't want to be associated with pro wrestling. That's why. And then on top of that, you have the MMA. You know, the MMA media, I guess, is what to say, and they don't want to be associated with pro wrestling either, even though MMA is pretty much pro wrestling. It's to a lot. It's not exactly pro wrestling, but it uses a lot of pro wrestling things, and there is definitely a crossover. All you have to do is look at Brock Lesnar. If you don't believe that, you know, it was there before Ultimate Fighter. You had Ken Shamrock was, you know, a pro wrestler. You had Dan Severn was a pro wrestler. You've had other MMA guys in Japan who became pro wrestlers, and vice versa. So, yeah, you know, whenever they say that, I always kind of, you know, Vince McMahon and Eric Bischoff say that to cover their asses because they don't want to admit that, you know, they've lost fans to MMA in large part because MMA is doing what pro wrestling, you know, should be doing, and is doing a better job of it. So, you know, there you go there. So, yeah. Anyways, let's get going. What do you think of Brody Lee signing with WWE? Do you think Davey Richards and or Eddie Edwards will ever be signed? Maybe Eddie Edwards. I can't see Davey Richards being signed. I can see Eddie Edwards being signed. As far as Brody Lee, we'll have to wait and see. I have not seen him in FCW yet, so we'll have to wait and see. I'm curious of what he's going to look like in FCW when he's in there with guys that are roughly his same size. Is he going to look like just a tall, thin guy? What is he going to look like? I think that's a big part of the whole FCW thing. So there we go. All right. LV, who had a whole bunch of questions, so we'll just go right down the list here. Since Davey Elgin, there has been discussion of this match being the greatest ROH match ever. What do you consider the greatest ROH match ever, and why? Personally, I know a lot of people think it's overrated, Joe versus Kobashi, because to me, that match, you know, you had Samoa Joe taking on Kobashi was a big deal. It brought in a newer fan base for Ring of Honor. Not only that, is, you know, I completely enjoy the match because I love both guys. Again, I know a lot of people think it's overrated, but to me, that's pretty much the match. So there you go. With the discussions of what was the major downfall of WCW as far as TV, pay-per-view, like the Finger Poke of Doom, Vince Russo's shoot on Hogan, a Bash at the Beach, etc., what would you say was the major downfall of TNA on TV and pay-per-view? He meant WCW, but he said TNA. I don't know if that was a joke or what. But anyways, here's the thing. You know, in my last video I talked about the Finger Poke of Doom. To me, that was kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. I know a lot of people disagree with that. People can disagree with that all they want. But really, where the downfall really started, in my opinion, was you had first, you know, the WCW guys never got the, or better way of putting it, the NWO never got their comeuppance. They never got, you know, beat down. They never, you know, the Horsemen never went after them. Sting, you know, Sting beat Hogan, but really, you know, the NWO they were never defeated. That was part of it. The fact that you had so much young talent that was used, the fact that you had so many guys that people wanted pushed that weren't pushed. You had all of those things, which just made WCW built on, you know, it was a house of cards, and wrestling was a lot bigger then. They definitely still had an audience, but that's pretty much where everything sort of, you know, changed. And once you had one event change that, it all just kind of went straight downhill. The company lost millions, went from being the most profitable wrestling company in history to 1 year to becoming a complete failure the next. And if it hadn't been for that, even with AOL buying Time Warner, WCW wouldn't have gone away. It would have either stayed somewhere on the Time Network because it would have been such a strong property that they couldn't get rid of it, or they would have sold it to somebody else and it still would have been around in some form. Other than Hulk Hogan or other than Vince McMahon, because it would have been worth so much more money, and Vince McMahon would have been able to get it for a steal. So there we go. Let's see. With the let's see. Oh, I did that twice. Some would consider Dave Meltzer the guy for pro wrestling MMA. Once Meltzer is no longer around, who do you see replacing him with that role, and will that hurt, not affect, or better the perception of how in-depth we view pro wrestling MMA like Meltzer presented? I really don't know. I imagine it will be Ariani, but I'm not a big fan of his, to be honest. There's nobody that I think just gets it necessarily, and I think that's the problem. Is Dave Meltzer gets it. He gets a lot of the things that on the business side of stuff that a lot of other people don't, and I think that is what would be sorely missed. I just right now I don't see a lot of people who would replace him. I'm sure someone would emerge. It wouldn't surprise me, but who has the connections? Who can knows the guys? I mean, that's going to be another thing. You have to be able to call up some of the old timers. You have to be able to have the connections to be able to talk to people in WWE, even though he's not supposed to, and everything else. I mean, that's the thing that people don't get, is that he talks to just about everybody everywhere, and that's of course that would be the big thing. So okay, the 90s for many people are considered the greatest decade for pro wrestling. It includes stuff like Japan, Joshi, ECW, Monday Night Wars, the Attitude Era, and even some degree the stuff in Mexico. Which one of these components would you say contributed the most during this decade? I would actually say Japan, and here's why. You have to remember that the NWO actually was something that was taken from Japan. Yes, New Japan ended up having their own NWO, but invasion angles were something that Eric Bischoff got from Japan. So I believe it was, what was it, the war invasion of either the war or the UWFI invasion of New Japan, I can't remember which, but that he saw that he took that idea and kind of went with it. So and that is what kind of spearheaded, that was like the first little momentum shift in the United States for WCW, for the change in business, which was allowed to bring in the guys from Mexico to the United States. I think that was kind of the spearhead, if that's kind of what you're looking for. So there you go. A few years ago, you had issues with Kurt Angle versus Samoa Joe from Lockdown 2008, saying you've seen better matches of what Joe and Angle was presenting. Could you give us a match or matches that could present your case? Actually, there's not one that I can think of off the top of my head. I'm pretty much, I've read this before, but I'm not going to go through and try to find any match. If you type in a search engine, in a search on YouTube, you will find, and type in UWFI, you should find matches that were a lot like this. Basically staged MMA type matches. Gary Albright, Takada, who else did they have? Vader, a bunch of guys, and they did basically the type of thing that Samoa Joe and Kurt Angle were trying to do. I would almost be positive there was something with a striker versus a grappler, which is kind of what they were going for. And I think if you saw those, it would come off a lot better. Me personally. So there you go. Okay. Would should WWE offer a wrestling school for their writers, seeing as if they hire soap opera and Hollywood writers who don't watch or understand the product? Yeah. You know, the thing is they probably still wouldn't do that. You know, I think they should be hiring guys who do get the product. You can, I mean, the whole reason why they hire these Hollywood writers for the most part is that they know nothing about pro wrestling, and they don't want pro wrestling writers. They want Hollywood writers to try to make themselves look more legit, which I just don't think comes off very good. So there you go. Would offering free training give potential athletes more of an incentive to join the WWE? I'm asking because compared to other sports, their training is far more extensive, and the sport itself is far less rewarding. No, what I think they need to do is find guys, particularly guys who, you know, might go into MMA, might go into pro wrestling, and spend the money to keep those guys out of MMA and train them into being pro wrestling and redo the way you do things. I think WWE is going to have to redo the way they do house shows, how many house shows they do, how they do house shows. I think they're going to have to redo a lot of the structure ways that pro wrestling is done from that perspective, so that they can get some of those guys from MMA to stop going into MMA and going into pro wrestling, and hopefully giving them more money than what they see that they can make in MMA. So there you go. Let's see, Gavin48. When should the WWE do Triple H versus Brock Lesnar SummerSlam? Which is, I guess, when they're going to do it, and that is when I think they should do it. What are your views on Wade Barrett? Do you think he's worthy of being world champion one day? Yes, I do. For everything Wade Barrett isn't as far as a ring worker, he has presence and he's excellent on the mic, and that is one thing that you can't really teach, I don't think. Well, you can get guys better on the mic, but he just has a presence. You see him and you think, wow, who is this guy? You see him and he looks like, you know, a badass and like a guy who you should be watching wrestling. So there you go. Besides War Games, what other gimmick matches do you miss? Texas Death Match. There you go. Now we get into the big, long portion of our thing. Next big thing, my friend Brian. Yes, Brian, I'm going to use your name. So yeah, so he asked a bunch of questions. So he was like, well, can I ask you more than one question? I'm like, ask whatever you want. So he sent me a bunch of questions. So here we go. Would you leave Barely Legal as it is, or would you have Funk not win the main event in order to allow Taz and Sabu to go on last, since that was billed as the real main event? No. I think having the World Championship go on last, I think it needed to be done. Even if you had put Tommy in that role and he had not switched with Funk, I think he still needed to go on last, particularly if he did that. But I do think you needed that final image of, you know, Terry Funk and Tommy Dreamer, and the fact of trying to put Tommy Dreamer over without him wrestling. I think you needed that as the last thing to kind of go off. So there you go. Okay. You can only fire one, Bischoff or Stephanie. I would fire Stephanie, demote Bischoff, and hire Paul Heyman. And if Bischoff didn't like it, he can quit. There you go. Out of all the guys who have broken out, which one surprised you the most? He would go with Rock or Eddie, meaning Eddie Guerrero. You know, that is a good question. You know, I really think the guy that I think when he broke out kind of surprised me was Bret Hart back in the day, when he finally, you know, when they built up and he became kind of a big guy. That did kind of surprise me because I never saw him as that type of guy. Even though I really enjoyed him, but I never really saw him like that. You know, everybody else I've always really, really liked, as far as that goes. Well, and Tanahashi, I've never seen, you know, I think Tanahashi is very good, but I've never seen kind of the star power that Tanahashi has. It's always kind of amazed me in a way. So there you go. Looking back, do you think the late 90s had a positive effect, negative effect, or no effect on today's wrestling? I think it had, I would say it had a positive effect because everyone always compares it, and the negative of it is you can't do a lot of things you did in the 90s, so in some ways it had a negative effect. But, you know, it was, you can't sit there and say it was complete negative, because you did have The Rock, you did have Steve Austin. Work rate became kind of important even to the more casual fans. So I think in that way it became a positive. So there you go. What is your favorite match that most people probably have never seen? The Great Muta versus... I have two, just because maybe some people have seen the Great Muta versus Jushin Thunder Liger. That's one that I don't think a lot of people have probably seen that I absolutely love. And Great Muta versus Great Nita. Yes, that would be the other one, just for fun purposes. Let's see. Okay. Are you surprised Jimmy Hart has never gotten a chance to work in a creative role after WCW? He successfully worked Saturday night during a time where the company was in complete turmoil, been around forever, well respected, and close friends with top guys like Hogan. Yes and no. I'm surprised that no one has ever picked his brain, but you have to remember he's a Memphis guy, and honestly, not too many Memphis guys, been used. I don't think he would have been used in TNA until Hogan got there, and Bischoff definitely doesn't like, that type of guy, so there you go. And Vince McMahon, hasn't liked that type of guy since they've been trying to get, more legit as far as, in the entertainment industry, so there you go. A lot of people pointed to the death of wrestling when WCW and ECW closed. However, both the companies were already dying and had little interest in them. I personally think wrestling died when they went to 12 pay-per-views a month, and then created a giant creative team rather than having 2 or 3 guys booking. I do agree with the creative team thing. That's just stupid. You need 2 or 3 guys. That's all you need. 1 guy booking is fine because you have a definite voice in your stories, and that's important. I think you need a 2nd or 3rd guy because sometimes, and this is the way I felt, go back and look, this is one of the things I said about Gabe when I felt like, ROH, that I thought Gabe kind of losing steam. I think he just needed somebody else to book with him because all we were getting was 1 voice, and that voice was starting to get tired. You needed somebody else to kind of add a little bit more of a voice to that, add a little different things, add some different ideas. You had the 3rd guy, I think that's fine too. So yeah, I think that had more to do with it than the pay-per-views. The pay-per-views, when you had, WCW putting on 12 pay-per-views, WWE putting on 12 pay-per-views, and then ECW putting on 6, that was complete overkill, no question about it. I still think WWE doesn't even need to put on 12 now. I think 10 is fine. And TNA definitely doesn't need to do 12. They maybe just need to do 6. So, I think that's a valid point, but I still think it had more to do with the fact that you had all of these guys booking, and because you had all these guys booking, you didn't have 1 complete voice, and everything kind of got watered down booking-wise. So there you go. With today's creative structure and Vince's impatient, is it possible to create another star at the level of Austin, Rock, and Cena? I think it is. I say that only because I think, as much as I always gripe when Triple H and JR and other people in WWE always say, well, if the guy's good enough, eventually he will rise to the top. I do believe that as long as the guy keeps his passion. The problem with the WWE as it is now, because of their start-stop pushing, because they don't push guys, they don't get behind guys, I think guys get to where they don't care. And so they don't have the passion, and so they don't want to, they don't care about being, they get discouraged. And I think that if you give a guy that doesn't get discouraged, then yeah, I think that that's what it's going to take, in my opinion. Chair shots to the head have gotten a bad rap, and rightfully so. But how about all of these kicks and back fists to the head we see now, as well as guys dropping dudes on their heads? Shouldn't this be toned down? Look at Kabashi. To my best of the knowledge, he never took a chair shot to the head, yet his body is destroyed. Completely agree. As much as I love that style, that is a style that is extremely harsh on your body. And if you're going to do that style, you can't do that style every night. You can only pull it out every great once in a while, or because that's just as bad as going in and getting in a real fight. I mean, and it's supposed to be a staged fight, so there you go. In the 80s or 90s, was there a guy who Was there a guy who you were certain would become a top star and never did? Let's see, 80s or 90s. Who was a guy that I thought would? Well, Ahmed Johnson. I thought Ahmed Johnson would be, you know, a big deal, and that never happened. So there you go. Is there a match or angle that's universally praised, but you just can't see what everyone else sees in it? For me, it would probably be Bret Hart, Iron Man, or Joe versus Angle. As far as what everybody sees in it, I guess Joe and Angle from Lockdown. I guess, but I kind of get what people like about it. I just don't agree with it. I don't think they. I think there's better examples of what it is, but that would probably be. Yeah, probably that one. I would say. I don't know. Give me one, or if you have them, or more if you have them. Reason to be optimistic about the future of pro wrestling. The growth of Dragon Gate, that would be one. And I think iPPV is going to help pro wrestling in the long run, because I think you're going to be able to see companies like, I mean, if you look at all the companies that do iPPVs, there's companies that do iPPVs that most people have never heard of. There's one here in Oklahoma that people have never heard of that does iPPVs and Go Fight Live all the time. I think, you know, if Chikara continues to grow, I mean, that's not going to be a big relevance, or you know, it's going to take time, but I think all of that will help. The biggest problem I really see with pro wrestling as a whole is that you just have WWE, and you need to have a company that eventually is going to get big enough, even if it's just in Japan, where you have a company that's big enough to at least, you know, get in a bidding war with WWE over talent, even if it's just in Japan. I think that is that's what it's going to take. Can that happen? I don't know. If Dragon Gate, you know, can catch on big time fire, if maybe Noah goes out of business and then you see, you know, a bunch of the Noah guys go to New Japan, and then New Japan becomes super hot, that could do it. I don't really see anything like that happening in Mexico, unfortunately, unless you see a combination of you see AAA and CML merge, which is probably never going to happen. So that's what it's going to take, though. It's going to take a company to do that. Can a company do that? I think so. I think a company could do that. They're just going to have the money and the patience. And I see it more happening in Japan than I do in the United States, because you know, I think people have it in their mind that there can only be two big wrestling companies, and as long as Spike and Panda keep throwing money into TNA, we're gonna have TNA. So unfortunately, so there you go. Can you think of a guy who's done nothing of any significance in wrestling but would have been a big star in another era? I would say Mike Knox. I would say Mike Knox too. Dude would have been huge over in the 80s, huge over in the 70s as well. Another guy, let's see, who's another guy that I think would have been pretty big for a guy that didn't do much. Well, Jack Swagger. I think Swagger would have been a big deal in the 70s. So there's a guy. I mean, people would say, he's done some things, but he's not as big of a star as I think some people would imagine. So there we go. Well, anyways, I have talked long enough. I have done many questions. So again, guys, send me questions. Send me whatever you want to ask me questions about, and I will answer them. I do have some other videos planned, which I plan on doing. I talk about comic books, and my next video will be about comic books. So there you go. With that, I am out. Have a good one later.